There comes a moment where you're not giving up, you're just worn out. Not because you're weak, not because you're lazy, but because you've carried too much for too long with too little return. You keep showing up, doing the right things, trying harder, thinking deeper, fixing everything that breaks. But somehow, nothing shifts. And beneath all that effort, there's this quiet ache whispering. Maybe it's not supposed to be this hard. That whisper, that's where trust starts to breathe. We've been taught to grind, to earn our worth, to hustle through the noise and patch every crack until we're exhausted. Like if we just do enough, life will finally cooperate. But no one ever told us, sometimes the shift doesn't come from doing more. Sometimes it comes from trusting more. Because the moment you lean into trust, real, quiet trust, the energy changes, the chasing stops, and out of nowhere, things begin to move, not because you forced them, but because you aligned with them. That's the secret most people miss. You don't get what you demand. You get what you're in harmony with. And trust is what brings you into harmony. Trust means knowing that peace doesn't come from micromanaging every outcome. It's breathing softer, loosening your grip, and remembering you weren't built to carry the whole world on your back. You were built to live, and life flows so much better when you stop trying to force it to be perfect. I know. Letting go feels unsafe when all you've known is pressure. Trust feels like free falling when your identity is tied to effort. But here's the truth. Trust doesn't make you weak. It gives you your strength back by finally pulling your energy away from what you can't control and pouring it into what you can. And if this is already softening something in you, take a moment, like this video, and subscribe for more steady, soul-deep reminders you won't want to miss. Here's what most people never realize. Trying harder doesn't always mean you're driven. Sometimes it means you're scared. Scared that if you stop explaining, you'll be misunderstood. Scared that if you pause, everything will collapse. Scared that if you rest, you'll lose everything you've been fighting for. So you keep proving, keep overthinking, keep showing up even when your body begs for a break. But underneath all of that is something deeper, a quiet distrust of your timing, of your intuition, of your enoughness. Because deep down, you still believe that what's meant for you needs to be convinced to stay. But what if it doesn't? What if letting go is the very thing that brings it in? Sometimes the shift happens when you stop forcing and start listening. Not to the noise, but to yourself. Because pressure will have you chasing things that were never even meant to be yours. And trust is what makes you pause long enough to see that. It gives you room to breathe before you react, to sit in the silence without assuming something is wrong, to let a slow season be sacred instead of calling it failure. The truth is, real peace doesn't arrive with panic. It moves gently. It grows in stillness. It comes when you stop scrambling for it and make space for it instead. Because here's something life teaches you the hard way. Control is an illusion, and the more tightly you grip, the more everything slips through your hands. Trust is the opposite. It softens the hold. It slows the mind. It shifts the question from, how do I make this happen? To, what am I making space for? And when you've tried and pushed and overworked yourself into burnout, there's a point where peace becomes the only option. Not because you've given up, but because you finally understand you're not here to manipulate the outcome. You're here to align with it. And when you live from that place, a place of calm, of clarity, life meets you where you are. There's a kind of magic that unfolds when you stop needing everything to happen right now. When you let go of the obsession with instant clarity, quick fixes, and overnight growth, you begin to notice what's already working. You begin to breathe in the progress that was always there, quiet, slow, and steady. You realize just how much of your energy was being drained by constantly checking. Checking if you're ahead. Checking if you're behind. Checking if it's working, if it's enough, if you're enough. But falling behind, based on what exactly? Some imaginary finish line that no one can see? some internal stopwatch you never agreed to, but still let control your peace. Because once you start trusting, really trusting, you stop treating every pause as a threat. You stop interpreting every delay as a sign of failure, and you start asking better questions. Not why is this happening to me, but what is this clearing space for? That's the shift. That's when you stop sprinting and start becoming. That's when force softens into flow. Because here's the part no one warns you about. You can win the game, get the job, the partner, the success, and still lose yourself on the way there. You can have it all on the outside. But if your insides are depleted, anxious, and numb, what exactly did you gain? That's why trust matters. It doesn't just move you toward what you want. It keeps you whole while you get there. Because when you trust, you don't abandon your values for speed. You don't silence your intuition to fit in. You don't chase people just to escape loneliness. You start living at the pace of your truth. You start resting when your body says stop. You start leaving what no longer feels like home. And in that shift, your entire world begins to respond differently. Not because you pushed harder, but because you finally stopped fighting. Here's the truth. Trust isn't passive. It's not waiting and wishing. It's active, alive, intentional. It's waking up and showing up, not from fear, but from faith. Not from panic, but from presence. Even when you can't see the result yet. Even when nothing looks different, you feel different. And that's where everything begins to shift. Think about it. How many times have you rushed a decision, not because it was right, but because the waiting felt unbearable? How often did you say yes with a tight chest and a silent no? How many times did you stay longer, give more, or settle deeper simply because you didn't trust that life would offer you better if you walked away? Trust rewires that pattern. It gives your nervous system space to settle. Teaches you that not every urge needs a reaction. That stillness isn't stagnation. It's wisdom getting ready to land. You start responding instead of scrambling. You stop over-explaining in rooms that never deserved your voice. You stop overgiving in places that only applauded your exhaustion. And instead, you begin to wait, not in fear, but in faith. For what's aligned, for what's gentle, for what doesn't make you abandon yourself to keep it. That's the kind of life trust creates. One where every no becomes protection. Every delay becomes preparation, and silence, it becomes sacred space for something deeper to take root. Trust doesn't just soften your grip, it sharpens your vision. Because without it, you'll keep running toward what doesn't fit just because standing still feels unfamiliar. You'll keep calling chaos opportunity just because you're scared of missing out. But when you finally trust, really trust, you slow down enough to see what's real. You pause long enough to feel what's aligned. You stop reacting out of fear and begin responding from wisdom. That's where things change. You no longer say yes to stay needed. You no longer explain yourself to feel understood. You stop trying to prove your worth and start moving from a place that already knows it's enough. You realize you never had to chase the life you wanted. You just had to match it. And that matching didn't come from hustle. Came from stillness, from patience, from learning how to be enough, even when nothing is happening yet. That's the truth no one says out loud. Trust isn't waiting forever. It's knowing what's not for you and finally choosing to stop rushing into it anyway. So if you're still clinging to the idea that more effort will finally bring peace, maybe it's time to put it down. Trying has its moment, but trust is what steadies you when effort can't carry you any further. Because the things that truly matter, they don't scream for attention. They don't beg to be chased. They arrive when there's room. And that room is created by trust. Start trusting your timing. Even when it feels too slow, start trusting the silence. Even when your mind begs for noise, start trusting the stillness that doesn't look like progress, because that's usually where the deepest alignment begins. The truth is, things often start moving the moment you stop trying to force them. Not because you gave up, but because you finally got out of your own way. And if anything in this message made you breathe a little deeper, if it reminded you that peace doesn't live in pressure, then take a moment. Like this video and comment. Today, I choose to trust the process. Let that be your quiet act of self-acknowledgement. And hit that subscribe button because we've got more of these reminders coming your way. You won't want to miss them.